That's enough of that music.
For sure.
Hold on, I'm just getting situated real fast.
Hey, maybe Pekka will join. Who knows?
I figure we'll do an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, and we'll just go through some questions. Anybody has any questions they can ask, come up. Um, Also, uh, Zach, I like the Votnik soup article. Nice, congratulations all around.
I think it was fairly weak. Like,
They always are, man. They always are. They're
nothing
ninety
was even
percent of the
interesting or
information.
juicy. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
like a
ninety
Google
percent of
search.
the information is like off of old Facebook posts that you made when you were 13. So
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't even have Facebook, and I know who exposed me because I've only like WhatsApped with a handful of people, and only like two of them are against me now in such a public way, and they shared my number because they work closely with NAFO out of the Israeli space. So I know exactly who did it and the timing, and the shot at Richard Spencer from pro Ukrainians is so funny that I know 100% whose fingerprints are on that. 100%. I
me,
mean,
it
it was
was
you.
me.
No, but like it's
That
yeah.
it is what it is. It doesn't even matter.
No, they
I
did me a
I
favor in a way. So
I learned long ago that it's mostly just dorks behind their computer screens that can't do anything in real life. So
Speaking of
that's
getting doxxed, what's up?
what up.
I saw Ukraine space and I was like, thank God, a Ukraine space, not another Israel space.
Yeah, I can't do much more of that. It doesn't end up ever going anywhere.
it's a dead end.
Yeah, it's just it was fun for like well fun. It was interesting for like two days and then kind of kind of ran its course for me. I don't have any interest in the region really, other than the grander the geopolitical ramifications of it. So I keep an
Well,
eye
that's
on
not
it,
really
but
like a conflict that that people that are involved in it are willing to even look at it from that standpoint. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't do geopolitical analysis. Remember the episode that we did with Brian and how good it was? People hated that because we were just telling the truth, and they're so emotional, and like that's what's wrong. Like that's what happens at this conflict. At least with Russia, Ukraine, we can be like, here's tangible evidence. Ukraine is losing. Like this is happening right here, and we have confidence that Russia will win. And the other side, it's all emotion driven. It's nothing that's because none of the information is even correct coming out of anything.
that's another thing is it's all just like at least you know where the lies are coming from when it's the Ukraine stuff. It's either Western establishment lies, like the Ukrainian lies. You have your Russian lies, but at least you kind of know where it's coming from. It seems like, and then there's some truth, you know, l- late, just inlaid in all of that. But when it comes to the Israeli conflict, it's like every single thing is a lie, and it's like a competition to see who can lie better. It's very impressive.
And it's a lot of it's just like a mire of bullshit on purpose. Like they kind of purposely bog you down with with Ukraine, we get our silly stories and they're silly and we debunk them that day. With this conflict, it's like here are 30 different stories. By the time you debunk all of these, we'll have another 30 tomorrow for you. It's just way too much is happening. Like it's you can't even get a clear picture.
If anybody has any topics or anything that they want to talk about, you're more than
Can we
welcome to
get an
come up.
update about Avdiivka, please?
Yeah, so in terms of the situation around Avdiivka, I don't believe now that Avdiivka is going to fall anytime soon. I think that the Ukrainians are preparing for the eventuality, but I think that what has happened is again Ukraine has gotten themselves into a Bakhmut situation, and I'm not even talking about casualties. I have no interest in talking about that because I think it's a pointless conversation. Everybody has their own numbers, and it doesn't really add to any analysis outside of, ooh, we killed more, but that's how the US ran the Vietnam War, and that didn't turn out very well because everybody just lies and makes up numbers. Um, so when it when it comes to Avdiivka right now, the Ukrainians kind of got themselves into the trap again of, not a step back. It's this horrible salient that they probably shouldn't be defending realistically. Like, take a step back, look at the map. It just doesn't look beneficial. I think the Ukrainians kind of have this idea that if they start to lose cities, especially cities close to Donetsk, it kind of puts an end to the whole idea of a Ukrainian victory. It puts them further away after coming off of the counteroffensive that did nothing. They are, trying to minimize the damage and the fallout from this. And so they're sending every available reserve brigade to in two directions to Avdiivka and Kupiansk. And they're going to try to hold these two areas with every single thing that they can possibly muster. And what I think you're going to actually see, and what you are seeing, is Marinka is starting to be sacrificed. Novomahailivka and Ugledar down in that direction is all going to start to see a lot more Russian pressure, while the pressure is being maintained on Avdiivka. I expect a lot of these other areas to fall more quickly than Avdiivka. I think Bakhmut is going to get pushed out pretty extensively, and the Terny area right above the Shubyansky Forestry in the LPR is also probably going to fall quickly to the Russians. They're making like kilometer progress every day.
Are we
Go
just?
ahead.
Oh, yeah. I have a question for Zaganel and then another question for Scott. So Zaganel, now that you're fully doxxed, face and all, are you willing to become like a full-fledged like video live stream geopolitical analyst instead of playing these fuck games on Twitter Spaces? Number one. Number two. After you're done with that, can you talk about the bridgehead and what's going on there, where all like the video of the bodies were the really sad video?
It's crossed my mind. I'm not quite sure yet. There's still a lot of people who follow me or involved with me that really have like no idea about any of this or even who Pekka is. So yeah, in time perhaps, but for now I'm sort of just going to ride the wave, and we'll see. I mean, it certainly might benefit me in the long run, but I
I
don't
think
know.
it
Let's
actually will. And you want to know why? Like, it sucks and it's like terrible for like a month. And then afterwards, you're like, I have nothing left to lose. Now I can just be a maniac. And then you just have this like freedom because it's like, what am I protecting? It's literally all out there already. So now I'm just
Yeah,
like, I
like
need.
yesterday I was like, "Oh boy." And then by like the afternoon I go, "This was great." Like so I sent him a message being like, "Thank you. I appreciate what you did." Like and that was stupid because you blew your load and you didn't find anything. And well, thanks for uh thanks
Yeah,
for
I
boosting me.
I literally got bored reading through it, so
I only saw
I think that's a good thing.
the initial post and I was like, oh, I knew his name last year. Anyway, like, I was
Yeah, it
like,
was just
if it
like
took him this
yeah, it was just the
long.
screenshots of me shit posting and being like, "Yeah, Ukraine's going to lose." And it's like, "Oh, I can't believe it." And can you imagine like I don't work for anybody, but you could imagine these people calling, "Do you know that you have a vatnik in your office?" "What's a vatnik?" "Sir, who are you? Who are you with?" You know, that's these people
Sir,
are
I'm with
legitimately
NAFO.
insane.
This is a serious organization. We've been sponsored by Sarah Ashton Cirillo. You may know him from his various excursions and videos like, Putin, you are already in hell. And then your job will say, well, we'll have to fire him. Sarah Ashton Cirillo's people have called.
Or just be an absolute maniac from the start and not care about getting doxxed at all.
That's Scott.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Literally.
You embraced it.
Bro, I was about to dox myself. I didn't give a shit. I did
Yeah,
dox
it's
myself.
crazy.
I did a full 3-hour video with Defense Politics Asia like 2 months before that came out, and just not enough people saw it to recognize me.
Yeah, we suck. If we're like out here self-doxing and they're absolutely missing it. This says how bad our reach is. Just like how like Zach and I was like, nobody even saw it. It's like, how bad is their reach? They still don't.
Yeah, that's just Pekka now though. I don't think very many people are following him really like they were.
The cute
All
that.
is he
It's
just
just
reposts
Napos.
old
Yeah.
Vodnik soups, and it's just kind of like tiresome.
And then like the new people from this new complex are like, oh my God, thank you for the info. And I'm like, I did an interview on it. It's right here. Like I've done 3 interviews on everything you want to know. Just look it up. Like it's crazy.
I did say to him, it's like, I see you do these televised or like online. So if you're really curious, like we could just set something up. And
Invited him on. We've invited him on
yeah, no,
our
and
show
I was like, you
twice.
can have me on, and I'll reveal
Oh,
myself.
that's not how these people operate.
No.
They won't talk, they won't communicate because that's how you expose them for being what they are. They'll never come on a space. They'll never do anything like that. It's just not going to happen.
He came on several times
Did he
before
talk?
he talked. He came on like 5 times, and he talked 2 of the times. And the one time he talked longer, he basically said he regretted a lot of the things that he did, and isn't proud of it, but like at the same
And
time,
then continues to it.
and then continues to do it, and is like, oh, and by the way, like I'm going to be going to work with a 3-letter agency in January. It's like, okay, bro, you do you.
Go ahead if you have a question. Whoever has their hand raised.
Yo, thanks for hosting this space. I just wanted to ask you guys a random question I was thinking about earlier on. My office is very pro-Ukraine, right? And has been since flipping ages. I'm pro-Russia, right? And I've been unapologetically quite open about that at the workplace and amongst my friends and everything like that. However, I find a lot of people are still very quiet on the issue about what's going on. But I think now with a lot of new stuff coming out with what's been going on, they're not able to hide about what's the actual truths are because there are actual truths. You know, there's facts, there's stuff that's happened and that has been brought to the limelight. In regards to like what Putin's stance is, all of the old stuff about NATO expansion, etc., etc. What I wanted to ask you guys, and just generally anyone can like just say their viewpoints on this. How long until people start being okay with Putin being a pretty cool guy?
I think that they're kind of getting to the point where they have to admit that he's a cool guy. The harder part is them admitting that we're fucking nerds. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like it's the harder thing is to admit that we were never the cool guys. It was like I think that's it. Like there's a lot of for the United States anyway, and I can't speak for Britain. You guys are a little bit more maniacal, but for the United States, we're still not ready to admit that for the falling apart of Afghanistan and Iraq, we kind of have just swept that under the rug. And then while we're engaged in 2 conflicts, there's just no way that the United States is, they'll quietly do it, but they won't come out and be like, Putin was right, or, we've lost this wartime for the next one. Like, that's just not going to happen. So people, you say you work for the government. I think that, it's a lot of denial about like, this is my job, this is my bread and butter. As long as I tell myself, or as long as, I hold the line, like, it's hard to admit that you're working for something that you don't believe in. And then a lot of people don't want to admit that. It's very hard. I mean, I did it for years, so.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, thankfully, I don't work in one of those kinds of like departments where, well, I'm not going to give away too much info like you flipping maniacs because I don't want to get doxxed, right? But thankfully, I don't work in a department that's that involved in foreign politics. Do you know what I mean? Like ours is like very, see, I'm giving away information that I shouldn't really be doing. But anyways, it's not on that level. It's completely different. It's more about homeland stuff and it's nothing to do with crazy stuff. It's good stuff that I'm involved in anyway. I think so.
I
But
think there could be good and bad stuff in the government for sure, unless it's like the
yeah,
Israeli government, then it's literally all bad. I mean, yeah, I'm comfortable saying that.
yeah, like, you might have some departments which are for, I don't know, housing. You might have some departments which are for policing, some which are for lawyers and law. So it could be literally anything. I definitely don't want to even, I want to stay a civil servant because I think it's a good job to have, right? It's safe, it's stable. But even if I want to stay in the civil service for like forever, I'll never ever think about going to those other sides of stuff where, completely wrecks people's lives, especially on the other side of the world or anything like that. But I just find it crazy that people still today, I mean, I'm in Britain, you know, but I still find it crazy how even if people understand the truth now, you're right, Sarah, people are still afraid to speak about it. They're still afraid to admit that, oh shit, we're the bad guys because we're actually supporting this either actively or passively.
I think that there's also an aspect of this where you have to remember that you probably have 3,000% more knowledge and information on any specific given topic that you're thinking about than the average American around you. A lot of people would be surprised how little Americans care about anything at all, let alone something boring like geopolitics and news and stuff like that. So you're constantly surrounded on this app by people who are also super interested in this niche, topic and conversation. But once you get away from that you just have to remember that people just don't have the time in their day to care. That's like the biggest thing is people just have lives going on. So while it might seem like they can't let go of this idea of American exceptionalism, they're also not drowning in the counterculture like we are, where we're seeing every little mistake that the US makes abroad and it's highlighted, you know, to such a degree that it's almost impossible for you to be like, oh, how can I, you just have to say, how can I support this? Or how can I get this to change or whatever. But it just doesn't really come to people's minds like that so much. And I think that's just something important to keep in mind.
And think about how much the average American is kind of insulated by the government. Not, I don't mean that in like a nice way. I mean that in an informational sense. Like they lie about our deficits, they lie about the Pentagon losing money, they lie about us being in a recession and they call it something else. Those kinds of things. We are kind of coddled and again, not in a good way. We're kind of kept in ignorance on purpose. And it keeps, like Scott said, it breeds apathy where you're like, it doesn't matter because we're taking care of it. We'll be all right in the end, right? We'll be all right.
Hope so. Hope everyone can be okay in the end.
I mean, the thing that I've kind of set out to do at this point is because of what Scott says. Like, people get fixated on niches, or people are fixated on their emotional attached causes. Just take it back to like literally what is the whole entire conflict of the world? It's a conflict between Western hegemony and the opposite. So just pick a side, and then I'll teach you from there. And if, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you pick Western hegemony, I'll teach you why you're an idiot. And if you pick multipolarity, then we'll talk about that. But people are getting stuck on the little teeny tiny things, whose house was bulldozed, if Ukraine is using HIMARS or F-16s. Like, none of this stuff matters at the end of the day.
Do you
Like,
know what I
Russia's going
mean?
to win.
Completely. But that's the other thing as well, though. Like, look, okay, I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm not going to give you guys too much because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a maniac like you idiots. I don't want to get doxxed. But I am British. I am a Muslim. I do have my own stance on certain things around the world. But at the same time, I'm pro Russian because I understand the history. Okay? I understand the history that my father taught me. I understand the history that I've looked into. I understand about post World War II, World War One, what's been going on. I understand the NATO expansion issue. I understand all of these things. I also understand about the stuff that's going on in the Middle East because, like I said, I am a Muslim. I've got my own connections to that part of the world. I've also got connections to China because I've got my own personal connections to that side of the world. And a lot of the questions that I ask myself, I have to go out and investigate. And my whole situation about China was like, I had a lot of Chinese friends. So I ended up going to China because of all of the Uyghur genocide issue that was brought up. I did my own bloody research into it, found out it was all about money embezzlement by this broad called Rabia Kadir. Did a hell of a lot of research whilst I was out there. I spent 6 months backpacking out there, guys. Do you know what I mean? And I came back, and a lot of my friends were like, "Why have you gone pro-Chinese?" I'm like, "It's all BS. It's all propaganda. It's nonsense. This is exactly what they've done to the Muslims for years. This is what they're doing to the Chinese now, and this is what they've been doing to the Russians." It's
I
almost like they're forgetting about the NATO expansion. It's almost like they're forgetting about what happened. And I understand a lot of people do bring up the issue about Serbia and Bosnia and all of that. Who allowed that to happen and who made that happen? You know, it's okay, feeling disheartened when you hear about people dying and this happening and that happening, but without doing actual research into it and actually looking at the nuances of those kinds of arguments, man, people are so stupid. It pisses me off. I mean, sorry to use a few bad words here and there, but it really annoys me. Now, just because I'm, pro-Palestine because I'm a Muslim, but even if Palestine wasn't in Palestine, if it was in bloody South America somewhere, my stance would still be exactly the same about what's going on in that side of the world, right? Because, like you said, I'm looking at it from a humanistic point of view. Like, how can you not have empathy with people who are struggling? How can you not have empathy with the Russians? How can you not have empathy with the Russians who are actually in Ukraine who identify as Russians? How can you not? Look at what they've been through. Look at what all of them have been through. And you're right, it is all about Western hegemony. It's all about control. But some people's opinions, especially on some of these platforms that we go on, it's a bit nutsy. It's like you can't be pro-Russian because one day Russia might decide to, you know, go and attack the Muslims, or they might turn friendly with the Zionists, or friendly with Israel, or friendly with this country, or friendly with that country, or because of BRICS. BRICS is just starting off, first of all. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of these questions and these obstacles that people are putting in front of themselves, in my opinion, it's flipping BS. Because Sarah, I sent you a DM earlier. I don't think you read it, but the gist of it is this. It's like, imagine all of us, and I'm not saying Sarah as in yourself now, I'm just saying, imagine we stop looking at things from a certain point of view because of something that might happen in 10 years' time. How ridiculous is that? Now, time travel is not invented, so can you imagine the whole concept of the Terminator movie? It goes out the fucking window. That
Wait,
might
so
have gone
did
over
you
your
just
head.
make everybody pro-Russian and then also ruin the Terminator movie all in like
No,
the
no,
same?
no. Hear me out. The Terminator movie is actually a very good analogy for this because in the Terminator movie, you get the T-800. He goes back in time to kill Sarah Connor before John Connor's born, right? But John Connor's not been born yet. So why are we going and killing Sarah Connor? Do you understand what I'm saying?
To
But
prevent him from
I
being
love it.
born. That's the whole premise.
No, no, but that's the whole fucking point though, yo. Listen, time travel doesn't exist. That's Hollywood. That's James Cameron when he was actually a good fucking director, right? But right
Yeah,
now,
now he makes it movies about climate change or something.
yeah, exactly. So that's my point. So how can people who have got these platforms, who have got voices to speak, who have got huge reach, which is good because a lot of stuff that they do actually spread out there is actually very good. They're waking people up to like very, very good causes in the world, okay? My stance on it is that's good. However, don't be putting things and fear mongering into like, oh, just because you're pro this, you can't be pro that. It's ridiculous. People are talking about, hypothetical situations in the future where Russia might decide to turn evil, or as the Americans have been doing for how many flipping decades now about China ever since they saw China's growth. Oh, but what if China decides to, control all of these countries that they're giving out money to or helping them build infrastructure, or the countries that Russia is helping? They were doing the same thing to Putin and Russia when Russia was trying to like input money like elsewhere in order to help certain countries with their infrastructure as well. I'm telling you, we're living in such bizarre times, and everyone needs to like wake up just a little bit more than they already have because the world ain't black and white. You know, the world is not flat at all. So none of these arguments would make sense if the world was flat, but it's not flat. It's three-dimensional. It's not a 2D flipping scape. There's so many angles to look at these kinds of problems. I don't know. I just feel in a very funny place today because I've heard such BS about anti-Russia when we know Russia's been in the right, you know? So I'm going to stay unapologetically pro-Putin because in my opinion, Putin has been so fucking based about everything. He's always been very consistent in his arguments about the NATO expansion, about what the West has been doing. So I'm going to stay like that. I'm not going to worry about a potential problem that might occur if one day Putin wakes up with a really bad migraine and thinks, do you know what? Let me go and slaughter all of the Muslims tomorrow. It's not going to fucking happen anyway. Because he's not one of these idiots who's going to do that. That's probably what a Western leader might end up doing one day. Because they do tend to flip flop here and there. And right now, do you know what? They're kind of like flip flopping on the Ukraine situation because they've realized, you know what? Maybe we bit off a little bit more than we could chew. And yeah, let Zelensky do whatever he's doing. It's not going to happen. It just won't happen.
Are you allowed to talk about the other trip you went on while you were in China?
Oh, for the day and a half. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm one of the only people that's actually crossed the Friendship Bridge in the last like 4 years. The Friendship Bridge, if you're not aware of what that is the bridge that links the northern part of China into North Korea. So I actually managed to go across there for like a day, not a day and a half, you could say, not 2 days, a day and a half. It was really nice. It does definitely look like a place which is back in time. There wasn't a whole lot of tech there. I had to give my phone in to the guys, to the security that was there. But people there were lovely, friendly, very simple. It was beautiful. They were very welcoming. I obviously couldn't speak a word of Korean. They couldn't speak any English, but luckily for me, I had some people with me who could communicate with them. And yeah, they were lovely. They were absolutely very welcoming. I had a couple of people translating a little bit for me. I understand the mindset and the concept of people. You know, they're not being controlled how we are told that they're controlled. A lot of these people, they're perfectly happy being in that kind of a situation because they don't want Western countries coming in and raping their culture. It's as simple as that. I'm actually going back out in about 3 weeks, not to North Korea, but into China again.
That's awesome. Just for house cleaning
Hello,
purposes,
Sarah.
if
How
anybody
are you?
wants, hello. If anybody wants to come up and ask questions, you're more than welcome to request. I'll add you. This is just kind of a relaxed,
Can I
open
ask
space. Talk.
from them? Yeah. Uh, can you say me about the uh, United States government and Afghanistan? What do you do? The
One more time.
the Afghanistan situation is very, very bad. After the United States government leave the Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. We come in, we try to do our thing. When it doesn't work, we leave, and we leave it, whoever's left there holding the bag. So, sorry.
We're quite literally holding on to the landing gear as the plane
Yeah.
takes off.
I don't. It's shitty. We suck. We do that all over the world.
I can't hear you. Can you say again?
Me? I'm just saying that the U.S. is notorious for going around and doing this in foreign countries. It's one of the biggest issues I have with the place I live. I would love for our foreign policy to be much cleaner, but it isn't, and that doesn't.
Sarah, where are you from?
Right, so now I live in Seattle, like the Seattle area.
Yeah, I'm from Afghanistan. I'm in Afghanistan now. I see the situation of Afghanistan is very bad in the uh, down down cost, and every situation is very bad.
Yo, Ramin, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm I've got a little bit of Patani in me. My mum's half Patani, right? Um, so again, I've got a little bit of connection with that part of the world as well. My mum's like Pocahontas, yo. Like literally, we've got a little bit of everything in us. But in regards to Afghanistan, I don't think things are going to change until the Imran Khan situation in Pakistan can be changed. I think once that changes, then something's going to happen with Afghanistan, and hopefully, God willing, things will start to become better. But until that happens, I doubt anything's going to change with Afghanistan at all, because of the kind of control that's been put on the country, because of what's been going on in the past, and especially because of like Western influence of what's been going on. I really don't think there's any chance at all. I personally think one of the main reasons why they did arrest Imran Khan is literally because of what's going to be happening with Afghanistan and what his plans were about Afghanistan. Because, as you know, he's a Pakhtun as well, Imran Khan. So he did have plans in order to help Afghanistan to build that relationship and build that trust again between those neighboring countries. I think it's a shame what's happened, but again, I'm not surprised, because as soon as Imran Khan started speaking out against the Americans, what happened? All of these cables got leaked where the American government had, contact with these. I don't know if calling them traitors is the right word, but the other people in the Pakistan government. And what did they do? They ended up ousting Imran Khan. So that's basically what ended up happening. Yeah, I agree, man. It was terrible.
Where
But
are you from, Mister?
uh,
Where are you from?
Sarah's in Seattle. She's in America.
You. Where are
Oh,
you from?
me? I'm in
Yeah.
Britain.
Where?
Britain, England.
England. Yeah. Um, the English forces came in Afghanistan in 200 when 2001. Okay, came in Afghanistan. You think about the force of English and some do uh, some do wrong in Afghanistan about of force and against the Taliban government.
Obviously, it's all bad. They shouldn't have gone in at all. They had no reason to go in. What reason did they have to go in? It was all predicated on lies and BS. That's literally all it was. It was just a power move. They just wanted to show the world this is what we're about and this is what we're going to do. They didn't really understand what they were doing at the time, right? They just went there. Why? Because they knew it doesn't matter when it is that they left, whether it was 6 months, 6 years, 16 years, or however long it's going to be. They thought at least we'll have more bases in that part of the world. I literally reckon that was the main cause of them going there. They just wanted more bases. They wanted a bigger presence so they could, again, destabilize the area and try to control as much of that part of the world as possible. This, again, Ramin, honestly, man, you got to look into it. Look at these cables that were released recently. In Afghanistan, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to get hold of so much information about what's going on with Imran Khan now, who's actually still in prison.
Yeah, Mister. Yeah, I know that about the 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 against the force of an international force in Afghanistan against the Imran Khan and Pakistan government, but and the international forces do have some rank work in Afghanistan because the international force don't work in the basis work in Afghanistan, basis in project in Afghanistan, and they are and the flow and the work in Afghanistan. This case. This case
Okay, well,
become this.
can we get back to Ukraine, because
Yeah,
that's
I
the
was just about
topic.
to say, if
So I
anybody
did
has
want to
Ukraine
know, Scott,
questions.
about that bridgehead where they just keep kind of sending bodies into the Dnieper.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
So,
so this is again.
sorry. Don't want and talking about Afghanistan. Why?
Because it says it's the Ukraine stuff, not Afghanistan stuff.
Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yeah, Ramin, I don't know if you can hear them or not, but this space is actually for Ukraine and discussing about what's been going on in Ukraine. You know what? Sarah is actually really good. Follow her, and follow anyone here that you want, because a lot of them do speak a lot of sense. And by all means, I think next time they have like an open discussion, join in. But this space, it looks like, is literally made for Ukraine and what's been going on with Russia and Ukraine at the moment. But follow Sarah, honestly. Read her post, man. She makes some really good stuff.
I think Afghanistan's money was stolen and given to the Nazis in Ukraine, and that's all I'm going to say. Thank you all for the space.
Here, here. A lot of things were given to those Nazis that didn't belong to them.
Okay, back to the bridgehead. So the bridgehead is just the last vestige of this counteroffensive that just kind of refuses to die. I don't understand it at all. The idea was basically that combined with a push down through Robitny towards Tokmak and then down to Melitopol, there would be this coordinated river crossing that we're seeing right now. And with the Russians distracted up in the north, this would pull a lot of force from that because you have to respond to this bridgehead. And you know, the first portion never really worked out. The counteroffensive near Robitny never planned out the way it was supposed to. And the Ukrainians just found themselves with all of these brigades who had been basically prepared to do this one mission, this one river crossing mission. They had, confiscated civilian boats that we've been seeing. They had a bunch of boats that were delivered to them, like the Zodiacs and stuff, to cross the river and keep the bridgehead supplied. And it basically just got to the point where I think the Ukrainians said, well, nothing's working around Zaporozhye and southern Donetsk. Or Bakhmut. So let's just try this river crossing and maybe we get some PR out of it. Maybe the Russians collapse in this area because they're not ready for it. Or maybe we pull so much force from around the front line that it makes it worth it in some way. That's not how bridgeheads work. Bridgeheads are extremely costly. Ukraine is losing guys in and out on boats. The wounded, it's taking hours to get to the nearest field hospital for the most part, especially around Krinky, because there's just not a large protected facility or large settlement near the crossing. So it's about an hour's car ride in any given direction to get to a place where a hospital is. So casualties are high, the wounded end up dying. And I was talking about this for months. I don't know when the whole Kherson thing started, back in August or something like that. But I was saying for months, I said there's no coordinated push that this is, helping in any way. There's no benefit of staying on this side of the river. The only reason they're there, I think, is to keep this idea alive that they're still heading towards Crimea, which is extremely callous and cold to all the men and women that you sent across to die over there. And the Russians have been taking losses. This is not something I want to minimize. The Russians are fighting a war on this front. So, the Ukrainians sit on the higher bank with an actual surprising amount of artillery support. I would think that this artillery support would be much more useful around Avdiivka or, southern Donetsk or the LPR, where the Ukrainians are losing territory almost daily at this point, and there's complaints about ammo and stuff like that. But we've seen time and time again. I mean, the only place I see Lancet strikes anymore, pretty much, is from the Ukrainian side of the Dnieper River, where they're supporting operations in and around Krinky, pretty much. So, it it doesn't make any sense to me. It hasn't made any sense for a long time. I've been saying it for a very long time, and now it's starting to hit mainstream. Uh, you have Jihad Julian talking about it. You have the Wall Street Journal talking about it. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, probably New York Times, talking about it. Kiev Independent talking about it, which I believe is internal power struggles. The Kiev Independent has a side that they like to go after. I think they're more aligned with the military because they're always criticizing the political decision making in the country. But that's neither here nor there. The operation around Krinky is just at this point a failed PR stunt, and it's just still costing Ukrainian lives just to hold it. They don't have artillery advantage, they don't have aviation advantage, and they have to cross rivers on boats to keep a small strip of land supplied. So it's kind of a depressing little section of the front.
Can you bring up my friend Truth? I want to introduce him. Also, what about the F-16? Sorry, it's Beans. What about the F-16 teaser? How many did they get? What's in? Some people say they're already in the air. What are we looking at? I'm really sorry.
I have no idea. I think it's still way too fast. I think that they're just trying to still once again create this illusion. They're doing these PR sort of stunts. I mean, when did the Russians ever put out a teaser trailer for something? It's like, I mean, maybe once I can think of, they did something like that, but they're always doing this hype shit to try to make everything seem better than it is. Uh, they're getting a few, I think 16 in total F-16s. It's just not going to make a difference. Ukrainians still have capabilities of launching Storm Shadows and stuff like that. Obviously, we saw that today. I don't think that was carried out via F-16 yet. I don't think they're probably even in country yet. I don't think the pilots are ready yet. But the Ukrainians are still the Ukrainian Air Force is still being kept alive through Western maintenance and donations and stuff like that. Every MiG-29 and Su-24 is being scrapped and pulled apart and pieced together and making all of these planes for Ukraine to continue flying around because they are losing them. They are breaking down. They are being shot down. They do get hit on their bases, even though you don't see it because nobody can take pictures in Ukraine without getting arrested. They are losing aircraft, and that uh, what it means is that the Ukraine still has an air force. The F-16s are not really going to add any new capabilities that their current fleet isn't already doing. The biggest issue the Ukrainians are going to run into is the quantity of long-range deep strike weapons such as Scalp or Storm Shadow, ATACMS, stuff like that. Not the airframes that they have to deliver said weapons. So. F-16s is just again, it's another fancy distraction. We still haven't seen Abrams on the front line. Still waiting for that. I don't know if we'll ever see him, but uh, you know that's kind of the situation with the F-16s. I don't put much stock in it at all. I don't even think you're going to notice them. If any of the people who I just brought up have any questions, you can go ahead and ask.
Well, Scott, what do you think of the Ukrainian Minister of Defense, Umerov?
Hello. I have a question for you guys that live in the US. What do you think?
The Minister of Defense, Umerov. He's a Crimean Tatar. He's from a different political party than the Zelensky group.
Don't you think it's just a...
He can't hear me. Let me drop him. And it seems that the United States has been talking to him quite a bit. Do you all think that he could be a viable replacement for Zelensky in peace negotiations?
I think we're so far past peace negotiations at this point. I don't think that that's even something to talk
And
about.
I don't really see that as a viable candidate only because of the geopolitical situations outside of Ukraine. Could you imagine putting in a Tatar Muslim right now with the climate of everything that's going on in Israel? Do you know what I mean? Like Zelensky is a big proponent of greater Israel and including Ukraine somehow in that. I still haven't really figured that out yet or done my research, but I don't think that would be, I think the more likely candidate would be Zelensky, though.
I don't think that there can be any change right now in the political structure without an absolute collapse because the second you start changing stuff, the calculus changes for the Russians, right? I think this is why they've avoided decapitation for as long as they have of any high-ranking officials. I think that they kind of know that. Oh, hold on, sorry, my dog. they kind of know the enemy that they're dealing with. Like, it's better the devil you know, right? And Zelensky's the devil that they know, the devil that they've dealt with. They know what his next move is going to be. He's going to do what he does, and it's going to be the same every time. The second you start getting new variables into the equation, things start changing, and you start to lose control. This is something I would be very careful with when it comes to any analysis. Is the U.S. thrives off of chaos. They go around creating chaos, trying to capitalize on it. It's what they've always done. It's what they're always going to do. You can look at any example. You can even talk about, like some of the earliest examples, like the Germans in World War II, talking about how U.S. generals led. It was just chaos. And they thrive in it, and we benefit from it, and that's how we operate our foreign policy. It's always, oh, well, let's just overthrow the current leadership, create a power vacuum somewhere, and then capitalize off that power vacuum, right? That's what the U.S. does. So, or tries to do, at least. Sometimes they fail, but I just don't. I don't see any chance of negotiations, and the Russians, the second you put somebody else into that position, the whole equation changes for the Russians. They're going to probably have to act more aggressively, more swiftly, because the second you remove the head, something has to replace it, right? And the odds are that the US or Britain has somebody in line. I always think it's Bundanov, because he's like the puppet. He's the CIA, like, long term. I believe that he is very deeply connected with the United States. But somebody like that gets put into position, and now you just have a nightmare on the other side, because now you have potentially a competent enemy who's being singularly led and told what to do by the United States or by Britain. He's acting very efficiently, and it just can get very dangerous. Like I believe that Zelensky is an unqualified idiot that the U.S. put in there for political reasons and didn't think about the military aspect of what he may or may not be dealing with. And I think the Russians are very comfortable with that. So no negotiations. And to me, I don't believe Zelensky can be replaced right now. I think that ruins any argument for continued support of Ukraine from the Western politicians who are still pushing for it. And if you get, the second you change something, everything changes on the board. So I just think everybody's kind of comfortable with where things are right now.
Yeah, I think Umerov is Turkey's guy. And I think if the Russians prevail, they'd be more willing to sort of shift to letting the Turks perhaps
If the Russians
manage
prevail,
portions of
it's still an
Ukraine.
if, Zagnall.
No, I mean, like, we have to be careful about these things. There's still there's still a long way between the Dnieper River and the city of Odessa. There's still a lot. There's still going to be a lot of casualties.
If you want my opinion, I think that this thing has been kind of over and done for a while now. I'm not saying that Russia is going to win in a year or 2 years or 3 years, but I think the decisions at the top have been made. I think that they have a direction that they're going in, and I do not think that you will not recognize Ukraine by the end of this. It's going to be a long, drawn out process, but there will not be the Ukrainian state that you recognize today. It just won't exist. I don't think it can exist. Like, I just don't see a path of it surviving, and the rest of the world also surviving at the same time.
Do you
It
really
won't be our problem anymore.
Do you think that at the end of the day, though, does Russia need to cater to Turkey, or does Turkey need to cater to Russia? I feel like Turkey's kind of, a little bit. It's kind of like floating, untethered right now, and because Israel has a ton of stuff to blackmail them. That's why they can't really get fully involved in the Gazan war, and they've kind of had a lot of missteps in the EU lately. So I don't know their geopolitical strength right now. I always have trouble with Turkey, though.
I
It's kind of an
think
enigma.
Yeah.
I think Turkey is always going to potentially be a problem for anybody. It's so centrally located. It has its hands in so many different areas. You know, what it used to be, what it's not really so much anymore, was Turkey, Azerbaijan, and the pressure that they would put on Armenia. That was a way of constantly keeping Russia close, because if any way you can avoid problems in Armenia and the Caucasus, you want to, right? And Turkey always had that card at any time. They could flare up that conflict, and that just puts pressure on
I'm
Russia.
so glad you brought this up.
But not
Yeah.
anymore, though. I mean, the Russians sort of abandoned the Armenians and said,
Well,
this
they
is
didn't
one less
abandon the
headache now.
Armenians. The Armenians said, fuck y'all, we're going to get the country 4,000 miles away from us to protect us.
Oh, but that's a good, overall, that's good for the Russians, because
Don't
that was
ever
huge
forget.
leverage
They're called
that the Turks had.
they're called the Three Brothers. That's not just a saying that Deep says. They're literally called the Three Brothers: Israel, Turkey, Azerbaijan. They are a weapons triangle. So, appeasing Turkey and Ukraine is also kind of appealing to the Azeris, which is something that Iran might not appreciate, because that's Iran stands with Armenia. See, a lot of people, you guys know, because we talk about it more like a chess game, and it's like these big pieces are moving. A lot of these people in these spaces talk about these tiny pieces that are moving, right? But people don't realize that these alliances, there's a history between Turkey and Israel. Turkey and Israel have organized more than once to make sure that they deny each other's atrocities on the international arena. And anytime Turkey starts to get mouthy, Israel will say, I will start acknowledging the Armenian genocide. And Turkey gets right back in line. Right back in line. Israel has a humongous sway over Turkey. They use their airspace for training. So anything that appeases Turkey plays right into the hands of the Zionists. So I think that that's another sort of balancing act that's going to have to be. Go ahead, Shrew. Sorry.
It's okay. Thanks for having me on. It's just interesting to note when you mentioned that this war, I agree, this war has essentially been over for a while. It's more like a transition process. Zelensky is very desperate for troops now. He's actually modified the draft. He's lowered the age limit further. I mean, he's already been conscripting kids and adults in older age, like senior citizens essentially, who have almost zero military experience, to join the army. But he's made it even worse, I'd say, or he's made it even harder for people. He's issued a whole list of penalties for draft evasion, such as including a ban on transactions with real estate, valuables, obtaining a driver's license, loans, and benefits. So if you're not agreeing to conscription, you're screwed, basically. In addition to that, he needs money. So the EU recently rejected a pay package around $50 billion. I think Hungary was the one that vetoed it. There might have been some other countries as well. Now the U.S. is actually debating whether to basically steal Russian assets that are currently frozen. I think there's around $200 billion. I've seen different reports. I'm not 100% sure of the amount. I think this would significantly undermine the U.S.'s hegemony position, since other countries will definitely lose confidence in the U.S. as a safeguard, safe haven for assets. So it will no longer be a reliable paradise if it did that. A few senators have objected, as much as they hate Russia. They don't want to further tarnish their reputation, because they've run out of money and they can't just fund all these illegal wars. As far as leadership goes, I mean, let's be honest. Zelensky's been a puppet figurehead from the beginning. It doesn't really matter if he's there or not. The generals are making all the big decisions anyway. Zelensky is essentially in control. I'd say that Zelensky's more of just a cheerleader these days. He's just like a not so qualified foreign minister going around trying to collect funds with his hat out, begging across Europe and the U.S. So I think Putin's plan right now, I agree with the Aussie Cossacks analysis, where Putin has invited Hungary, Poland, and Romania to join in so they can split up land. So he was saying that Transcarpathia would go to Hungary, Galicia to Poland, Bukovina back to Romania. I think this is great. It'll make for a nice transition process and appeasement among the neighbors, because they'll be happy to get their land back. And, well, the U.S. doesn't really have much say. And last I heard, with respect to peace process, no. More like unconditional terms of surrender on your knees. You'll take what we give you now. they're done negotiating any type of peace. There's no trusting the West, NATO, or the U.S. ever again. They're not to be trusted ever again. Again, Putin's regret was not intervening earlier. There's no more negotiation, and they've tried mediators like, who was it, Naftali Bennett back when he was Prime Minister of Israel, Erdogan, because the Turks are so trustworthy, and he's just been screwed too many times with the Minsk agreements as well. So, no. Russia's doing it on their terms, but they're going to take their time. They're not in a rush because Putin's not going anywhere. He's healthy. He's going to be around for a while. And, God forbid something happens, there will be a succession. There's a succession process in place. I trust Putin that he's got the pieces in play for life after, though hopefully not for a long time, because the region and the world needs him, because he's the main safeguard to hegemony. And I think we'll be entering the multipolarity world soon, if not already. It's just the U.S. is still kind of in denial. They still think they play a major role, though I think they're being showed up in Israel because nobody expected this. I won't get into Israel much. We talk about that a lot. But they didn't think it would take Israel over 80 days now to try to contain a little militant group called Hamas. And look how much they're losing because of the Houthis right now. Although Russian ships are still able to pass, they're not losing money. It's just the U.S. getting screwed now. They really got shafted when they imposed those sanctions against Russia. Look at them now. One of the most powerful countries in the world again. Superpower. So sometimes, God wants one to struggle so they can realize their true potential. And I guess these sanctions were a true blessing in disguise for Russia. So Slava Russia. Thank you. I challenge any of those Ukrainians to come around and have a conversation. Love it. Bring it. Especially like the Ukrainian ones, please.
They don't do that. It's all good. If anybody who is pro-Ukrainian wants to come up and talk and actually have a decent conversation, you're more than welcome to. This is not I'm not going to mute you or push you out or anything unless it just gets ridiculous. But they don't usually like to talk because they don't really have any good points to make.
They're
Are
kind of
you?
riding high on the 4 fake jets that got downed.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
so
wait, the boat. Didn't something happen to a boat
That
today?
was 6 now.
it's the boat. The boat is it's just the same dopamine hit. It's how it goes. You're not going to avoid those kind of losses. You're dealing with NATO ISR, deep strike weapon capabilities, so it's going to happen, and you just kind of have to look at these events when they happen to either side. One ammunition depot is not going to make or break a war for either side. One ship is not going to make or break a war for either side. In fact, no ships in this war matter at all. They have done nothing this entire goddamn conflict.
They could destroy all the Black Sea Fleet ships, and it would make a difference.
Even the missile cruisers, all of those can be replaced by Tu-95s launching standoff weapons. So the whole Black Sea Fleet can be sunk. It has been completely destroyed before, and Russia has come back and won wars after that fleet has been destroyed. So, I mean, historically, this is just par for the course. I would also like to point out that it is a rather aging fleet. It needs to be updated anyway. So hopefully one of the annoying things about the Russians is that they're very bureaucratic and slow to do things, and they're an old dog and they don't always learn new tricks. I think everybody's kind of witnessed that over 2 years of warfare that we've seen. And one of the things that you might actually see out of this is a new revitalized Black Sea Fleet that's actually paid attention to. Landing ships don't do shit. There's no way you can use a landing ship now except supporting some push logistically. A landing ship is just a glorified cargo ship at this point. They don't do anything, and even if it was moving supplies, the Russians move tonnage by train, not by cargo ship. So just don't get overly excited about things that don't matter. Planes are going to go down on both sides. Doesn't really matter. They're going to be replaced. Tanks blow up. They're going to be replaced. Just look at the big picture and just keep your eyes, I guess, at a wider degree, and don't worry about the minutia too much because you're just going to get lost in it.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
argue that those victories are actually bad for the Ukrainians. They keep them in a prolonged war with these minor propaganda slash morale victories, and they really do more damage than they're worth, honestly, because they just keep avoiding the inevitable, prolonging the inevitable.
And you know, the every single time that happens, it pushes the Russians further and further and further, and they don't react like the Americans do. They don't react like the Ukrainians do. You're not going to see responses. This is something I had to learn too. This is something culturally I did not know about Russia when I came into this conflict, is that they don't react to anything. They remember, they make changes on the back end, but you will never see. It's like embarrassing. It's they don't react to stuff, and to Westerners, it looks like you're getting slapped in the face and not doing anything about it. But they are doing something about it. You will just never probably acknowledge what it is when it happens. They're going to fuck over the US or Britain or whoever supplied the missiles in one way or another. It'll come in time. You're just not going to see some kinetic emotional response like everybody in the West thinks that they should, because that's how everybody in the West reacts. And that's something that even I react like that. I expect bridges to get blown and power to be cut and this and that. And I've just had to like pull myself away from that. After about a year of watching this, I was like, oh, the Russians are just a different culture. It's just a different group of people, and they just don't act the way I expect them to act. So that is something to that end.
Don't you think don't you think people in the West have taken to it now, though, to that way of thinking? Because in the past, it was
No.
always like, oh, the guy's a lunatic. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. The same thing that they've been doing with Xi. The same thing that they've been doing with Kim Jong Un. Oh, they've got red buttons. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. But no, that's not the
I
way.
think the reason why you're hearing that change is because now mainstream media, like you have like people don't acknowledge this, but Joe Rogan has one of the largest platforms out there. Like more people listen to Joe Rogan than watch CNN, watch Fox News. So just in terms of like eyes paying attention to somebody. And you know how Joe Rogan fans are. They're fucking annoying sometimes. They'll repeat everything he says. I think it's not so much that the West is starting to understand Putin or understand Russian culture or understand that sort of more passive but calculated response to everything. I think what's happening is now you have mainstream media saying, hey, Ukraine isn't such a great place. Like, it's been a problem for a long time. We acknowledge that it was a problem. We made it so we couldn't send weapons to Azov because they were a far right fucking group. Like, and then that changed when there was a new boogeyman, right? As soon as there's a bigger thing to scare the public, that's what they go after. And now you're seeing the political shift where everybody in the U.S., all the high politicians are saying, yeah, I don't want anything to fucking do with Ukraine. This is going to be a disaster. This is going to crumble the exact same way Afghanistan did. Uh, and it's just going to be helicopters on the roofs of buildings in Kiev trying to get people out, right? That's worst case scenario for these politicians. So now their tone is changing. They're saying, let's not send money to Ukraine. And now the mainstream media narrative has completely shifted on Ukraine. So I really don't think it's so much us acknowledging or us changing. I think it's what we're being fed is now conforming to our bias, my bias, our bias.
I don't know. I don't think it's really a bias, though, when you're ranked the most corrupt country in all of Europe for so many years in a row as Ukraine was. I mean, what are they known for?
Everything's a
Human
bias.
trafficking, child
I just
support,
meant
and money laundering.
if you approve
Hunter
of it
Biden
because you think
working
it's
there.
right.
I mean, if you got a crackhead like Hunter Biden working there, a criminal who should be behind bars, and is because of his daddy. And
He's a good guy.
He's going to be the next
You just
president.
don't
just
You're just
misunderstood.
you just
wait.
don't understand addiction,
You really
dude.
should
That's
do a
your
space on
problem.
Hunter Biden
Hunter
one day.
Biden 2028
Real affairs in
is
Ukraine. I would
happening.
love to hear the stories.
You just
And we
don't
should invite that
understand
to
addiction and its complexities.
Bro, all right. I
I
feel
think you guys
like
should support him and buy yard more. Come on, put him back on the map.
I
I think
mean,
he's
the
worth like
stamina
five
at
hundred
his
thousand
age.
dollars. Got $500,000 kicking around.
he's
Buy
saying
a
at
Hunter
his
Biden jersey.
age.
Yeah, I mean, he's
No
like
money
50.
laundering going
How
on.
old is he? Is he that old?
Yeah, he's like
His
52.
dad,
He's like
his dad is
laying
like
hookers,
80
doing
something.
crack. I
He's
mean, he
like
withdrew.
he's my dad's age probably.
Yeah, Hunter's actually deceptively old. You wouldn't
I mean,
think
he
it, but
withdrew
Hunter is actually.
1.6 million in
Dude,
cash in a
cracking
year.
hookers is the fountain of youth. You just don't know.
No, you know that 1.6 million was from ATM machines only. That's incredible. That's
Fucking
Dude,
cashing them
incredible.
out,
what's
boy.
the highest limit on any ATM machine anywhere? Like
I
I'm
think
pretty
like 1,000 or something.
really like
Something
even in
like
like
that.
Dubai.
Oh, I don't know, but in the United States there is like a limit. I think the
Yeah, I
daily
know
limit's like
that.
maybe $2,000 or something like that. But
Jesus
People,
Christ.
Not
they
if
just
you're
use
Hunter
him and
Biden.
Man, you guys are loaded. In England, it's 500. That's pounds. So
he
I'm
must
not
have
sure.
been
That's
going to
like about.
multiple ATMs a day to achieve 1.6.
Are you even allowed to get your money out if you don't say what the government wants you to?
I don't
in
know.
Australia, there's a limit on if you want to withdraw like I think it's like $1,000 or more. You have to explain what it's for. You have to fill out a form. They have restrictions now on Catherine. Mads was explaining it, so I've read about it too. It's true, but
Oh
that's
Yeah,
man,
fuck that place.
it's screwed up. It's true. I think it's if it is going to be like more than 1,000 or 2,000 here as well, you got to give them a reason. I think the banks always
It's
argue that
usually
if you look
over
at
10
fraud and
grand
stuff.
here. Over
Yeah.
10 grand, and the IRS can flag it.
Do you know what?
Or over
Listen,
10
I
grand,
made
and
a
the bank has to report it to the IRS.
Swift payment. Not even that long ago. I think it's been 3 weeks. That son of a bitch took about 10, 12 days to go through. And it wasn't even that much money. It was like 2 grand. But to transfer that 2,000, it literally took about 10, 12 days. And Swift ain't supposed to be that slow.
Yeah, I mean, like I think with these missile strikes in Crimea, could be a combination of things. It's sort of like, look at us, look at what we can do. Please send us more. You know, the United States doesn't necessarily care that Ukraine can do it. And the Ukrainians sort of have to just accept that it's not a matter of capability. It's just
Hello?
that we
Is
don't really
nobody
want
here?
you to win, you know? So that's sort of my take on it. I mean, I think they've been short selling Kiev for a long time now. And it's just become clear at this point. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just
Yes, I
fine.
can hear
hear
you.
you.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I was
I mean,
doing something.
but it's just like, oh, look what we can do. We can keep hitting you. We can keep hitting you. We just need more of it. We just need more of it. And it's just like, that's not how it works necessarily. The more we give you, the more they're going to be able to shoot it down. Like, look at what happened with HIMARS. We gave you a bunch of them and they stopped becoming effective. And the only way you can really use them is in cluster, which, as we know, doesn't do a lot of damage to equipment and more so just causes some collateral damage. But if you're in like a fortified bunker or trench, it's not that great. And so, yeah, I mean, like that's what Ukraine's been relegated to using. And there's just a lot of anger on that side more so than anything else, I think. And it's defiance and greed as well. Gimme, gimme, gimme. And I think, like, you see all these posts. Why should such and such country have this number of Patriot missile complexes? Give it to Ukraine. We need it. You shouldn't have. I mean, this sort of attitude has basically lost them popular support globally, I think.
Well, yeah, they're some of the worst foreign policy makers I've ever seen in my entire life. They have zero experience on the world stage, and it shows. It's brutal sometimes watching them. I don't get it.
It's literally like if your local like town mayor just had a lot of money, drugs, and became like a major player in a European nation. It's batshit crazy. Like talking to Igor about it, and just like how rampant and despotic and like the corrupt it all is. It's literally like your dad just got up one day and was like, all right, we're rich. Let's just go be the whatever in the Rada. And like, it's just crazy town over there. It's like the wild, wild west. It's like the the fall of the Soviet Union that with no upper trajectory ever again. And they've just stayed in that like stagnant, horrible state and kind of like festered and with Western money for 30 years.
I think they've been comfortable for too long, to be honest with you. I mean, that's what I gather. And in terms of like capability, I think they've got too much stuff in terms of what they've been able to fight with. That's not the problem. It's just that they've not been effective. I don't think the Ukrainians are effective at fighting at all. And I think that's where the problem is. This is why they're grabbing kids now and women and all of this and people who don't want to enlist and don't want to fight. You know, they've got major problems. I don't think the problems are that they ain't got enough, machine guns or enough this or enough tanks or enough whatever or enough boats in the sea that ain't doing fuck all anyway. It's that they don't know how to do it. That's one reason. And I think another thing is I don't know, yo. Western countries, I reckon all of this support that they've been getting for all this time is going to be very soon that they're going to start looking at Ukraine like, like one of those dogs that someone took in as a stray, but it's got so many problems. It's getting fleas, it's getting a bad back, it needs this, it needs that, it needs this, it needs that. And no matter what they give it, they're not able to do anything themselves. But again, that whole instability thing that the West wants pretty much everywhere around the world, maybe they just want them to stay in that kind of a position. Who knows?
My in-laws rescued a dog off the side of the road that its whole back leg was just shattered, so they had to pay for an amputation and then like the follow-up. So yeah, I kind of get that analogy. That shit sucks.
It does. But obviously them throwing out all of this support, it's fucking insane, man. Like it's nuts. Because in my opinion,
At
if
least
Putin
dogs are
wants
cute, right?
yeah,
Stuck
totally,
with
man.
Ukraine, bro. Fuck.
I know, man. But with Zelensky, who knows? Like, it's only going to go one of two ways for Zelensky in the end of this, in my opinion. Either one, he's going to get killed somehow. Two, he's going to do a runner, either to Bahrain, the States, who knows. Whatever country is going to take him in, he'll end up doing one, but he's going to do a runner. I can't see any other outcome for Ukraine if they keep at it. Obviously, if Russia wants, I reckon they can close this off, but obviously they don't want collateral damage. They don't really want to obliterate Ukraine. They don't want to obliterate the people. I think Putin's been very smart about the way he's been doing it. I do genuinely think that. I think if Putin wanted to end this, he could have ended this a very long time ago. Maybe he does think, as you said earlier on, Aiden, if he wanted to, he probably thinks maybe I should have gone in earlier. But then again, that's another thing I find a lot of these Eastern countries, they seem to give way too much credit to the West. Look at China. China lived under, 100 years of shame, right? Russia's given them how many chances? NATO's inching forward, inching forward. Stop it, stop it. That's literally all he's been doing. That's literally all any country's been able to say. Can you not do this, please? Can you not do this, please? Well, sooner or later, they're not going to say, can you not do this, please? They're going to actually do something about it. Putin's been telling everyone for years, stop taking the piss. Stop taking the piss. They're doing the same thing with China. China's doing the same thing as well. They're saying, can you guys like calm the fuck down? You know? And all of this argument about Taiwan. Taiwan belongs to China. It always has been China. Post KMT, all of that stuff that's gone on there. It's nuts. It's all propaganda again. It's all about swaying public opinion. I don't know. What's interesting to me is just thinking about what's going to happen with Zelensky at the end of all of this. If he does do a runner, what country do you think he's going to actually run to? Because I don't think he's going to be welcome in the States. Sure as hell know he's not going to be welcome in Britain.
Well, if Israel's still around, there'll be a place for him. They like criminals.
Dugan said Israel's collapse is inevitable.
I
Bibi's
think it is.
collapse is inevitable. Yeah.
And apply
I
for a
think it is.
passport.
Question. So then can we do a hypothetical? So Russia's inevitable victory in Ukraine, whenever that happens, and it will, the Russia's inevitable victory there, how does that affect, because for me, the way that I look at it from a way wide geopolitical perspective is that we have the fronts, right? The Levant with Israel and whatnot. We have China possible in the South China Sea. We have the Russia-Ukraine war, and then we have another front, which is kind of lukewarm at the moment in the South America. So once the one domino falls, do we see a cascade? Because for me, the defeat of Ukraine aligns with the defeat of Israel. So do those things feed into one another? Because I just don't see how there can be a coexistence between a victorious Russia and Ukraine and a victorious Israel in the Levant. Those two things are too counterintuitive, too counterproductive for what we're trying to achieve here, which is BRICS, right? Because Israel can't be in BRICS. That's just not.
Israel's not going to exist, so there's going to be no need for Israel to be
Right,
in the
but how
BRICS.
much does this war matter to that is what I'm kind of like trying to play
I don't think
with
it
a little
matters
bit.
at all.
You don't see any interconnectedness between the Ukrainian war and Israel?
Only how this conflict has hurt Ukraine and the attention it's not getting. But I mean, I don't think Israel will fall. I think Israel will survive. Israel will just create a new coalition and align more with
With
Turks
whom?
and the Gulf Arabs.
They, I
Oh,
mean,
They'll
they
okay,
have
okay.
do
they
business
have
with all
they
these
have
people.
nukes.
They'll
They
do
have
That
business
makes
nukes.
with
sense.
them.
So
That
I
makes
mean,
sense.
they'll. It's like they don't. Once Gaza is gone, everyone will sort of move on, and I think the West Bank will gain serious consideration for statehood. And the Israelis will say, "We'll just exploit you economically. You'll basically be like, America's version of the Mexicans, and we'll use you for what we need, and we will create all sorts of partnerships in this region and become a net gas exporter."
Right, but
I mean,
that
that's
would
sort of
be
their goal long
that's
term.
an antithesis to BRICS having a strong Israel. That's not that can't coexist with.
bro, your fucking pug goes hard as shit in the
It's
background.
not a pug, but I know
Frenchie,
it's horrible, horrible.
it just sounds like little snorts.
Oh God. You guys know what I'm trying to say. Go ahead. Let Kremlin Gremlin talk.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm just gonna make, because everybody's bringing up how all these conflicts are kind of interconnected. I would ask you all to go check. Have you ever heard of the Rand Corporation? It's this think tank, American think tank, about projecting power, geopolitics, and such. And they had an article in 2019 overextending Russia, which was all about. We saw in 2020 they tried to coup Lukashenko, have basically ramp up this conflict in Ukraine, maybe reignite something in Georgia, Kazakhstan, then in what was it, early 2022. So they were kind of like trying to put Russia have to deal with all these fires around itself. That didn't really happen. Nothing happened in Kazakhstan. It was quashed in 24 hours. Belarus stood strong. Lukashenko was stronger than ever now. Georgia, nothing happened. Ukraine war, unfortunately, happened. And they're trying something in Moldova, but it's not successful, right? We saw in the last local elections, all these pro-Europeans pretty much lost. What is happening is kind of like the reverse of that. It's sort of overextending the United States. You have to give all this aid in. You had this initial plan of, okay, we're going to start this, overextend Russia, and then put on these sanctions, and just pretty much within a year, just collapse it. That didn't happen. Quite the opposite happened. And then the whole idea was, after you do that, a couple of years later, you go and you try to do the same with China. This hasn't happened in Russia. In China, the proxies that are supposed to do that with China, one of the proxies, I'm going to say something that maybe people are going to consider me crazy for saying this. One of the future proxies against China was supposed to be Russia after the defeat. Like, the whole idea was to topple Putin, whatever, and within a couple of years, turn Russia into a very pro-Western, blah, blah, blah colony, and have that as a proxy against China. So you understand now why China is basically in the same boat with Russia. Because if Russia falls, then they're next. There's not going to be any of this bullshit that people keep talking. China is just waiting to snatch Siberia from Russia. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and it's pretty obvious why not. I just stated that. The United States now has this other conflict that it needs to manage in the Middle East, which is also sparking like mini conflicts. The whole situation with the Houthis, tensions in Syria and Iraq. Now we're seeing something in South America. We're probably going to see something. My prediction, may be wrong, my prediction is we're going to see something very desperate in Southeast Asia from the United States next year, midsummer, after the elections in Taiwan, which my prediction, okay, is the pro-Chinese people are going to win. The KMT, the DPP is pretty much fucked. We saw that in the local elections in 2022. Out of the 21 regions, KMT won 16, the DPP just 5. And I don't know if you guys saw this. There was a think tank that said, okay, if China somehow manages to take over Taiwan, we have to destroy all the TSMC infrastructure before they do that. And some of these people in Taiwan actually caught on to that. Even one of the top guys in TSMC was like, "What the fuck? You're gonna destroy my business because geopolitics? No, 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 no." And that's basically, if right now we see Ukraine lose even more and more, it's gonna send a message to these guys that, hey, maybe this isn't the winning side, and we need to kind of keep an open eye towards this new multipolar world, whatever, right? And that's gonna hit them because if you let's put it this way, like pure geopolitics, right? Let's say you are this group of people in the United States, the West. I just kind of explained what's your plan on maintaining global hegemony and consolidating your power, right? You break up Russia, use that as a proxy against China. Once China is destroyed, you have all these like little countries that will pretty much see, okay, these guys are way too strong. They can use economic sanctions. They can use military against us. We're pretty much fucked. If you're on the other side, how your main goal, like the main, let's say, boss of the whole quest, is obviously the United States, right? It's not France or Great Britain or whatever. And how can you hurt the United States? You're not going to go and invade the United States. That's fucking stupid. Nobody's going to do that. The way you have to do it is you have to go around it. You have to poke at it economically and socially. How are you going to hurt the United States economically? Well, you have to basically start chipping away at its allies. You have to take away Taiwan. You have to pretty much chip away at South Korea and Japan. Next, you have to hurt the European Union hard, like fucking hard. And once you put a lot of hurting on these countries, and hopefully you convert some of them, you take them out of that sphere of influence, you're starting to hurt the U.S. economy. And once you hurt the U.S. economy, you can actually go into their information space and start fighting an actual information war. And that's how you kind of can destabilize it. I mean,
That's the thing, though, Wagner. Don't you think it's already started? All of this domino effect,
I think
especially when
so.
it comes
I
to
mean,
tech.
the fact that Russia is still here in 2024 and actually doing a good job when everybody's prediction was that by the end of 2022, Russia is going to be, over kaput. It's a pretty clear sign. Things are working out. We started the Gaza thing. We're seeing something in South America, and I think the tipping point is going to be in 2024 after the elections in Taiwan. I mean, that's from my perspective, that's the thing you have to keep your eyes on. Like election.
With the Taiwan thing, right?
What?
Unification is
Yeah,
the unification is always going to happen,
yeah.
and it's only inevitable. And especially also when it comes to North Korea and South Korea, regardless of whatever it is that the West thinks, that reunification is also going to happen. It's only a matter of time.
Exactly.
It's only a matter of time. Once those egos have dropped and they've sorted out their own, their own matters. Because to be honest with you, I know some North Koreans now, and I also know some South Koreans. People, they want to reunify that part of the world.
They're the
They
same
want it
people.
reunified. Exactly, they're the exactly the same people. I think you're right when you brought up TSMC, because that whole tech screw job is flipping so scandalous. The way they got screwed, especially with what's gone on with Huawei, because they've actually been doing a lot of infrastructure work, not just in Europe, but also in South America as well. I think a lot of countries have felt, being coerced by United States. United States stance has always been, oh, we don't influence other governments' policy when it comes to things like this and trade. Complete bullshit. They basically forced every country in the world to drop Huawei technology in their infrastructure. And that's so hilariously bizarre, because it was proven that whatever technology Huawei gave, they weren't going to have any control over. The control of those technologies, it was literally going to be internal in those specific countries. So, for example, I think British Telecom just switched off, or is in the process of switching off in the next couple of days, because that's the deadline, right? The deadline's supposed to be end of this year. They're in the process of switching off the last technology servers and whatever else that they've got on their networks. They're literally in the process of switching it off now, but there's no backup solution. And who convinced Britain to do these stupid things? It was America. And America's literally just recently been saying that they don't enforce these kinds of decisions on foreign nations, when they've literally been caught red-handed.
I mean,
They totally do this.
sorry to cut you off. Like this whole, I mean, I think we're pretty much past the what Western powers say and what Western powers do. I think we're past that. What they say and what they do. You don't have to look at what they say. It's irrelevant. You look at what they do, right? They say a lot of nice things: democracy, freedom, blah blah blah, human rights, etc., free and fair elections. But that's bullshit. We all know it's bullshit.
Do you
Like,
know what, though, Wagner? I don't think the war's going to be on that side of the world. I think the next two spaces where you're going to have huge conflicts, in my opinion, and I might sound completely ridiculously stupid for saying so, is going to be France. France is going to, something's going to happen in France. Trust me, Sarah, you could look back, you can think back on this, that I said this, right? France, something's going to kick off. And also Venezuela, because Venezuela has been boiling for how many years, and no one mentions it. No one mentions it because the
in
media.
what sense? Wait. In what sense? What sort of conflict? Like, is it going to be civil
Got
unrest?
a territorial dispute with an American puppet down there that they've like.
Germany's coming.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, like seriously, there's already
No,
a lot of civil unrest in France as it is, and it has been very
Okay,
widely documented. But at the
okay,
same
yeah,
time,
yeah.
but
That I agree, and I think it's going to be in a lot of places in Europe. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that in Germany. But I'll land my plane right now. Is the way I see it is keep an eye on elections in Taiwan. If the pro-Chinese guys win and they're starting to make moves and official moves in terms of, okay, we're one China, we want to kind of like put this in the constitution and whatnot, you're going to see like a freak out, like not like you can't even imagine. You're going to see provocations of war on from the United States. It's going to be insane. It's
now you're
basically
right. They'll definitely try it, especially with all of those new bases that they've put in the South China Sea.
exactly,
They'll
exactly.
definitely try something,
They're
but
going to try to drag in South Korea, Japan,
yeah.
Australia, the Philippines. They're going to try and drag in these people, but it really depends on what happens in Ukraine. Because if we see a collapse in Ukraine, South Korea is going to be like, you know what? I got North Korea over here. I have China. A lot of my economy depends on China. Look at what happened in Ukraine. I might want to sit this one out. And another important factor is something that for me, it's been on my mind in the past week is what happened in Colorado. Like, you don't have to like Trump. My opinion about Trump is that he's kind of a narcissist, right? I agree with him on certain things, but he's a narcissist. But taking somebody off the ballot, you're just going to probably see that in 2024 in a lot of other states. And you're going to have an election when nobody wins the, what is it, 273 electoral college votes. And what are you going to have then? Who's going to be president? And I'll leave it at there.
and it's not even that. I'm so glad you brought that up because I talked about this on Frontline, which is the show that I'm on every week on Rumble. There's a plug. But anyway, we talked about that pulling him out of the off the ballot, and I was like, dude, I don't think people understand this is just another chipping away at like the bedrock of the trust that we have in our government. What gives a government power over you? Your trust in that government, and that trust since COVID has just eroded significantly. And now you're telling us, telling us we won't let you have free and fair elections. We've been calling them out on this for decades, with all of the weird ID laws, and we were like, what's going on? Now they're just telling us, you will vote how we want you to. There's nothing you can do about it. This is terrifying. That's it. We have nothing left. If the foundations of our elections can be manipulated that bad in front of our faces, we have nothing left. We're done. We're finished. There's nothing, there's no trust, and it's gone.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is like part of that. You're going to see, if this sort of stuff happens, you're going to see a major information war going on in the United States information space. And I'm not like supporting or condoning it. I'm trying to think of it kind of like the way Mearsheimer, a lot of times is think of it from a realist standpoint. If you're on the other side, what would you do to maximize your chances of success, right? You're gonna jump on top of that. You're gonna do all sorts of shit, and people are gonna be like, on one side, oh, this is foreign interference. The other guys who are going to say, no, this is not foreign interference. You're actually doing this, and you're gonna get even more division. I'm not saying I'm pro or against this. I'm just looking at from the perspective of I'm, let's say, the top guy over Putin and Xi Jinping and all these other guys. And this is how I plan on winning this war. That's what I would do.
Do you know
That's
what?
what.
No, you're right. I think a lot of that has already started and it's been going on for a while. It's so good that you brought up TMSA, that flipping tech
Yes,
company.
MC.
Yeah, it's so good that you brought them up because there's been another shift in Europe, obviously with the Netherlands, and who basically controls the semiconductor technology. It's the Netherlands, and who controls the Netherlands via the semiconductor technology? It's actually America. But then again, with what's been going on with Russia, Russia's had to change how they do things because of this war and because of sanctions and because of everything else that's been going on. And in effect, China's had to do the same as well. I think a lot of countries are slowly starting to look at what Russia's been doing and how they've been able to operate and how they've been able to do different kinds of trades with different kinds of countries. They've realized, hold up a second, we can actually become self reliant. We don't need to be relying on certain technologies from America or sanctioned from America via the Netherlands, especially when it comes to semiconductor technology. A lot of the future tech that we're yet to see, especially when it comes to warfare, that these idiots always end up using for supposed defense purposes, it's all based on flipping semiconductor chips. Who owns all of the actual raw materials? It's these countries in South America and China and parts of Russia as well. So the next frontier of that war is definitely going to be based around what's going on. I think I think the Netherlands is kind of fucked. They've put themselves in a very sticky and strange situation, especially with their leader as well. Um, it's going to be an interesting few years. I don't think it's going to happen next year, but I reckon you're going to see a lot of differences coming up.
No, I'm not saying it's something that's going to happen overnight next year. I'm just saying that depending on what happens next year, it's basically if things are going according to my prediction, that's going to be like sort of like the height of the war, let's say. And from there, that point on, it's just going to be kind of like downhill. Whatever downhill is going to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that's a whole nother story, right? Because we can't, honestly, right now, I don't think I can actually put it on a map and say, okay, this is where things kind of started going in terms of this conflict, this shift in power, when things kind of started going uphill, so to speak, towards this culminating point. Some say it was probably around early 2000s, some say it was 2012, 2014. I don't know, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah,
But it's
definitely
going
what
to
happened
be.
overnight. Definitely what
It's
happened.
it's it's probably going to happen over the course of a decade until, I mean, a decade until people actually kind of. It's going to be generally accepted. You know, kind of like you would say, okay, the early 90s, okay, the United States is this whole hegemon. If you would have said that in maybe 1989, people wouldn't agree, but then in 1993, it was kind of generally accepted. That's going to be, that when you reach that point where it's generally accepted that, okay, things aren't like they used to be anymore.
I think Americans, like as in the general public, and when I say that, I don't mean people who know and people who do research, not necessarily people who just watch CNN, for example, or Fox News, right? I'm on about general people who don't even probably end up doing that. They're going to end up realizing, yeah, we are the fucking bad guys. I think that's going to be a big wake up call. I think societal changes they're going to start seeing in America. We're starting to see it now in Britain, but we still get asked when you go to a demonstration or go to a march, what's going on? How can you not know what's going on? Do you know what I mean? A lot of people are still very ignorant to what's going on outside. On the tech front, I think it's kind of interesting though, Kremlin, because it's brought about new challenges, especially engineering wise, right? You're going to start seeing significant changes in terms of what kind of technologies are going to be engineered in the future. I think Western side's going to be with Europe with what's going on, and I think the Eastern side is going to be Russia, China, and whoever else wants to actually collaborate with them and be in that market. So you're going to start seeing very stark differences. It's kind of interesting, and it's actually a little bit exciting in a weird way as well, because can you imagine if Edison and Tesla, Nikolai Tesla, not Elon's Tesla, if they were actually allowed to compete on an even scale, and not be hindered? If Nikolai Tesla was about to, if he never got, cock blocked in the way that he did, I guarantee you tech would have been it would have been completely different today than it is.
Yeah, we're going to see a sort of a quote unquote arms race in terms of technology. And that's usually like beneficial because if you think about it, that's kind of like the core of actual free market capitalism, right? It's people get to compete on the same level playing field and may the best man woman company win, right? Generally speaking, it's going to be good. Like even look at this World War II, and then during the Cold War, we had immense technological progress. Why? Because there was an incentive to have that technological progress, like real technological progress, not all these bullshit startup companies about having electrical scooters or whatever the fuck. I mean, yeah, let's say there's some value to that, but you don't necessarily need 7 8 companies of ride sharing. You don't need all these companies with food delivery because this is pretty a banal thing, right? It's not really improving humanity that much. Let's just put it that way.
Nah, you're right. I mean, I think part of that debate is always going to be, well, if there's so many companies that are providing a better service, that's like a very immature and naive way of looking at it. But what you're actually providing all of these companies, especially big tech and corporations, is you're just providing them more data. And the more data points they have, they're just able to control the people more. And I'm not even saying that we're in a tin hat cap or anything, I'm just speaking generally. The more data they have, that's how they're going to end up controlling people more. Literally, that's all it is.
That's what
Yeah,
Elon's trying to do with this app. He wants to turn it into a super app.
Probably, well, isn't that what Elon wanted to do initially with X? He wanted to
exactly. You
copy.
have
He wanted to copy
everything,
China's model,
payment,
right?
all of it.
Yeah, because in China you use
WeChat.
WeChat. That's yeah. So the Western name is WeChat.
He wants to integrate like crypto exchange, payment services, order food, maps, just an all-in-one service. So this
Yeah.
way, you spend all your time on his app.
Don't get me wrong. I use
And it's also a
the
message.
Chinese version a hell of a lot. I use it all the time. I use it every day. All of my mates in China and my family, they all use that app, and it's very useful because you can order cabs, you can do food delivery, and you can flip in cinema tickets. You name it, you can do everything through that app. But the difference is that app was developed based on what society wanted, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, it's based around the user. The problem with X is it's not going to be like that. This is literally going to be, we're going to be zombies holding our phones, doing what we're doing, and we're just going to be getting control. Any kind of news that they want to feed us, any kind of public opinion, whatever it is, they're going to use their fake ass algorithms to control and sway public opinion, regardless of how much we think we know. We're going to be very limited in the future in the West. This is my take on it anyway. Truth, I just remembered you mentioned earlier on about how much money was being held by the Americans. I think it wasn't 100 million, it's like 300 to 500
Three,
million.
300 billion or so.
Yeah,
I said around
billion, sorry. Yeah, yeah,
three,
yeah.
maybe it's 5. I don't know. I heard it was 300 because it'll show some interest is accumulated on it. These are supposed to
Yeah,
put it
yeah.
in a great account.
It's definitely in between three and four, or maybe even 500 billion. It's a huge number. It's massive. But then again, what they're going to do if they completely take that money, right, and they use it for themselves and they just give a few shillings here and there to the Ukrainians, it's not really going to make a big difference to them. However, with Russia, that's a huge chunk of change, yo. That's serious coin.
They're not giving anything to Ukraine. They're going to steal it and give it to the weapons manufacturers. Raytheon, General Dynamic, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, they're all going to get it. They'll build more weapons, they'll sell it to Ukraine through the IMF loans, and they'll resell it, make more money on top of that. That would be the ideal scenario. But again, they haven't done it. It hasn't been voted on, and it would significantly harm their reputation as a safe haven and dollar reserve if they did. So, I mean, I think they've already sanctioned more than half the world. That would push more countries towards what BRICS are doing. And also, I think incentivize BRICS further to finally come out with their resource-backed currency. But again, remains to be seen. As for Elon, one point about what you said about what people want. Most people are followers, man. They don't know what they want. They're idiots. Elon will just give them what they probably will want to use, and they'll use it.
So
And
true.
I have a proposal for Elon I was going to submit. It'd be nice to get some feedback, and that's that you should make everyone get a blue check mark. They don't cost that much. It's cheap. It's like what, $8 a month? Just cut your Netflix subscription. You get more content here anyway. So if you got everyone to do a blue check mark, and if you allowed everyone like us to get subs, we'd all be chipping in on subs and supporting each other because he gets a cut from the subs too. He won't need advertisers ever again. It could actually be a free speech platform like he proposed it should be. And then you won't have to worry about advertisers, but guess what? He could get anti-Zionist advertisers on the platform, which I'm sure he'd attract. But the thing is, he needs to pick a side. So he's got to grow a pair and finally choose. But I understand why he hasn't. It's more self-preservation. You know, he has to keep the other side in play. He's a bit of a Machiavellian type character, right? He's trying to play both sides.
He is, but at the same time, he's not. The X app thing, he was actually speaking about that before he started off SpaceX and the Boring Company. Do you know what I mean? So, like, maybe this is like an overreaching
I
thing that's going to take X amount of time to get to. I don't know.
I don't know about any of this. Elon's compromised to a certain extent, and I'm glad to see Richard here. Richard sort of agrees with me on this. I think that it's like it's just controlled opposition to an extent, but maybe even more complicated than that because of the SpaceX contracts with the government. Um, these grand jury investigations into him and the 4 cases are just, I think, a way to keep him in check. And he didn't disappear like Jeff Bezos did, who was told get lost, and Bezos got lost. We won't investigate you and potentially put you in prison if you go away. He went away. Amazon
When
Web
was that
Services is
told to Bezos?
Oh, there were some AWS issues, and he got very aggressive with it and was like, "We can just, not be your client." And the government's like, "No, wait a minute. Like, you're the one that got us into this mess. If we have to diversify and drop AWS for server space, we're screwed. So you can't be playing games with us like this, Mr. Bezos. And if you do, we're going to start looking into all your criming. So why don't you just enjoy your yacht in the south of France and get lost with your fake tit plastic girlfriend?" And that's basically what happened.
Right.
He withdrew himself from the company in sort of a low profile way. And this is Charles, who was doing research on this, and said he was basically told, if you're gonna fight this, you're going down. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure how much I think Musk is controlled opposition. I might have a different take on that. I think he's a con artist writ large, to be frank. I think it's in a way kind of simpler. The all of these save the world schemes seem to have this, heady, attractive quality to them. We're going to solve transit through, air vacuum tubes that I'm going to build, and the Boring Company is going to do this, and we're going to solve the energy crisis. I'm going to create these cars that are luxury electric vehicles, and I'm going to benefit from all these subsidies. We're going to bring the internet to Ghana, and a billion more people will be online through this, and SpaceX will launch them up there. There is something kind of heady about his projects, but I think they're, at the end of the day, not really legitimate businesses. And I think the heady quality to them is mostly bullshit. I don't even know what to say about electric cars. Um, it's not saving the environment in the slightest. I mean, it's interesting, maybe is better than a gas powered vehicle in many ways, but it is extremely energy intensive and is going to rely on fossil fuels as well. Or, coal burning or burning up the tires, etc. I just think it's this kind of like false answer. I don't think that there's going to be a massively profitable company in something like SpaceX, or the link, what is the satellite link thing,
Starlink.
Starlink.
Starlink. The Again, you see this with all this stuff, this neuro chip in your head company. It's working off research that was already done by other people. There was actually a Duke study at the turn of the century on, I think it was monkeys playing ping pong or something like this. Monkeys playing pong operated through some sort of sensor that's implanted in their brain. It's not really terribly new, and I don't know. It's just I don't trust that any of these things are going to be real companies. And he kind of, all this bragging about how he cares about humanity and he's done more than the world than anyone else, and so on. It's just like, well, take Bezos as a counter example. Bezos actually has a vanity project in what is it, Blue Planet or something, his space project. That's actually a vanity project. Billionaires can do massive vanity projects. He's not taking in rounds of investment from people claiming that it's going to be profitable. It's just, in terms of his lies on things, I mean, just the solar city, solar panels on roof tiles, self-driving, it's just all, I just find so much of it just to be totally fraudulent.
Yeah, Richard, you know what? You're completely right. But when it comes to electric cars, though, I've been going to China a lot, right? Over the last decade, especially, I've been going like so many times. The only time I've not been there is during COVID. And when it comes to electric cars, especially the last time that I went, which was just a couple of months ago, the number of electric cars that were on the street was flipping so shockingly crazy. The sky high numbers. I'm talking 80% of the cars in some cities, were electric,
Really?
and the
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy. It's actually very, very impressive, and the way that they've done the infrastructure out there for electric cars, it's amazing. It's literally top notch. All government funded. People are able to get cars and subsidies, so a lot of people are able to drive for cheaper, and it's costing them less. And the effect that it's had on the environment as well, it is literally massive. And I've been to so many different cities in this last trip that I went: Shanghai, Beijing, Hangzhou, Nanjing, like Xinjiang. I went to so many flipping places, and I kid you not, the effect that the impact has had on the environment, having such a high number of electric cars, it's incredible. But the other thing that they've done there is, when it comes to regular cars, which obviously need fuel, You're only allowed to drive them on specific days, and it's all based on your whatever car you've got. So if you, it'll either be you can drive it on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Friday, and a Sunday, and then it rotates like that. We're never going to be able to implement anything like this in the West. The other thing is with Elon, with electric cars and all of this, we got to realize, you know, I mean, I'm from Britain, right? And one of the things that's been crazy about Britain in the last few decades is we've come to the realization finally, and it's taken us a very long time, is to understand that industry is dead in Britain, and it has been dead for a long time. And it's only now that we're starting to realize this. We used to have so many car manufacturers in Britain, and majority of them they've all gone. And the ones that we do have, they're literally just for vanity, just to say that we've still got industry in this part of the
Yeah,
world.
it's like Bentley, Rolls Royce. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
All
So
all the
like,
all the big outfits have either gone to China or the United States or Turkey. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. So I think what you're going to start seeing in America coming up is going to be this same shift towards, and it's kind of sad. And I hope that the people, I hope Americans are starting to realize this now, and they're starting to train for different kinds of careers. Is that that kind of industry is going to be gone? It's not going to stay around, man. I think electric cars possibly that's a viable option in the future for America as well. However, it all depends on if it's going to be state sponsored or not, and that's basically the key ticket. It works in China because the state sponsors it. They want it to work. There's so many different car manufacturers, and the battery tech that they've got there is ridiculous. Like seriously, it's so next level. You see some of these
well, it's not
electric
as good
cars
as
that
the
they've got,
Tesla. It's not as good as the Tesla battery tech.
man. I'm telling
That
you,
the Tesla,
you
like the Tesla, the new Tesla can go for like, what was it like? I think up to 500 miles without a charge now. That's the brand new one, the luxury, the super edition. And we have a friend who's got an older one that makes like 350. I don't know, name redacted may have also had experience with this, but I think you could you can probably with one charge, with two charges, you can make 700 miles now, unlike a
yeah, but it's
2020 Tesla. Yeah.
yeah, but it's that cost aspect as well that the public's got, right? So how much does it actually cost to get one of those Teslas? And then again, you're never going to be able to get it to an 80% vehicle level as they've done abroad, like in countries like China. I don't think that's never going to happen in Britain. We're too flipping. We run with our own minds. We're very individualistic about stuff like this. I don't know what it's going to be like in the States, but tech's going to be changing a hell of a lot. But with Elon, it's difficult because it's America is a very consumerist country, right? And once industry is gone, what's left? What once industry is going to be on the decline even more in the future? What's next after that? You know, we've already come to learn that we're a tertiary industry in Britain, where is literally all in the future is all going to be based on tourism, a service industry, and pretty much that's about it. The only other thing that's going to be left here is going to be literally banking, maybe a little bit of tech, and that's it. Um, Guys, I've got to really go. It's like 3:40 a.m. So I'm tired as fuck. But honestly, do you know what? I've had so much. I've really enjoyed this space. I followed a few of you guys. I think I followed you as well, Richard. Am I following Truth? Truth, I've just followed you as well. But yeah, I'll keep an eye out if you guys ever put more spaces up. I'd love to join you guys more. It's been really fun. I've really enjoyed this. Thanks, guys.
Good space. Hey, by the way, before you go, I put up some stats on the so-called climate scam. You can see the human contribution to carbon dioxide emissions is nominal. It's 0.04% CO2.
Oh yeah, no, no,
Quick
no.
solution if people actually care about buy
That
more
part I
trees and
agree
go
with. Truth.
nuclear.
Now
Yeah.
that part I agree with. That part I totally agree with. At the end of the day, if you're going to be powering up an electric car, what the fuck are you powering it up with? Something's burning somewhere, yo, and that's going somewhere up in the atmosphere. So I agree with that. In China, it's worked because of, you just don't get that smog in the cities. Basically, it's just such a nicer environment. But in terms of caring about planet Earth, Mother Earth, or whatever, man, we're poisoning it any way you can look at it, and I don't think it's going to matter whether people stop using electric cars or not, or stop using regular cars or diesel fuel or petrol or whatever it is. That part of it's not going to really make a difference in the grand scheme of things. So I get you.
Oh, if they switched to nuclear energy and just replanted trees they cut down, that would solve the problem because trees
That
need
would
carbon
solve the
dioxide.
problem.
They absorb it.
Yeah, that would solve the problem. It's
But
true.
they deliberately don't do that. So
Because
I
there's
mean,
no
they
money in it,
vilify
yo.
nuclear energy. Yeah, I know,
There's,
because the oil and
there's,
gas companies control the lobbyists
there
who
you go.
dictate
And who
Congress
controls them?
get passed. But then you got an
Oh
idiot
no.
like Biden screwing it all up. So I hear you.
Oh man. But yeah, see you guys. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yep. Have a good day.
Laters, dudes.
Later. I don't know. Now I think that we have Richard, we could maybe have a little bit more of like a debate about these things. Richard, I'm sure you saw the ship that was sunk today in Crimea, and then we shot down 4 of your planes. We shot down a few of your planes. This sort of back and forth rhetoric now of the Ukraine war. I mean, so as someone who supports Ukraine, do you think the situation there justifies a change of course from the West, or do you think it's full steam ahead still? We're gonna bring you a new round of funding. We're gonna rearm you once we get our act together. Maybe we'll even send you another Patriot battery. Like, where do you think this is gonna head? Richard, can you hear me?
Oh, if you just asked that whole question, oh, that's hilarious.
Scott, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you.
Maybe Richard stepped away. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I'm sort of curious to know what the thinking is on this, because I think it's naive for pro-Russians to assume that support for Ukraine will just be abandoned, or I still think that the craziest stuff is yet to come in that war. I really do. There has to be a climax of some kind, and when that happens, shit's really going to hit the fan for a short period, and I think the tensions will be heightened even more, because the whole point of this exercise was preventing Russia to succeed anywhere on the battlefield. And once they start to do that in a more obvious way, I think the panic might really set in, and the crazy demands and requests will come, and that's when the Russians could actually be provoked into a greater response if like a nuclear strategic base is hit with drones again. And I mean, because you'd think that NATO ISR can do more, and they oftentimes just choose not to. And just because there's still adults in the room to a certain extent telling Ukraine, nah, this isn't feasible. Nah, we don't want you doing this. So, I still think that an argument can be made for continuing to fund them to bring Russia pain. And honestly, as long as the Russians are in Ukraine and there hasn't been a resolution, I'm sure the West will keep funding Ukraine to have the ability to strike back and so forth. It's here you go, here's another scalp. Merry Christmas. That's sort of where we're at now, I think. And for the West, they may be this is just fine by us. And the Ukrainians, of course, really don't like that. They want as much as they can get as soon as possible.
Kremlin, did you want to take this? I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief and then let Red Dog. Obviously, I kind of agree. I don't think we've seen the height of the war yet. Um, Support for Ukraine isn't going to go down in terms of at least what they can offer, realistically offer, because there's a difference between, what you wish you could send and what you can actually send. Because at some point, even just look at it let's talk about missiles for the Patriot system, right? The United States has basically ramped up its production. It's a little bit or around 450 missiles per year. This includes missiles that the United States would need, some back orders for various other countries that use the Patriot system, namely Gulf states like UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, to name a few. Also the Asian bros, South Korea and Japan, and then send some stuff to Ukraine. But there's always this problem of what you can actually produce. It's not going to go down. the way I see it is like the way the war actually ends is when Ukraine doesn't have people to send at the front line anymore. When you basically run out of resources. It's not a willpower thing. It's not a money thing. I keep telling people like it's irrelevant. Like you can always print money. You can always print dollars, right? But you cannot magically turn those dollars into tanks and missiles and whatnot. That's the thing. That printing the money is easy. Getting into actual goods, that's the difficult part. So I think the war is going to end when you basically don't have enough people to kind of like sustain the front and it starts collapsing. But I don't think we're there yet. Probably next year. Hopefully, I don't know. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. I mean, it like this thing will take some time still, and it's a large country. There are lots of sort of boundaries in place that make it difficult for like a wide scale advance, because you have to remember, if the Russians go into like the lowlands and the steppe and put out a lot of infantry, those positions will be very vulnerable, and I'm sure the Ukrainians will use whatever they have to strike that with everything they can, and probably kill a lot of people. So, like, you have to be very careful and sort of weigh the cost benefit here. It's and also like taking some of these larger cities, Dnepropetrovsk, Zaporozhye City, Kherson, like, what's the point to a certain extent, unless you know that the people living there, that there's at least half of them that are sympathetic to your presence, or interested in having you there. If not, like, why would you want to maintain that administrative headache? So I would assume, if intelligence suggests those cities are too full of pro-Ukrainians, well, then they'll probably sadly end up getting destroyed. So I mean, that's why I think we still have a lot more to go if the contact lines are really going to be pushed past the Dnieper River, and cities like Odessa and Kherson and Nikolaev and all these are within play. Then you got to really make a calculated decision on what kind of support. Odessa, of course, is a Russian city, I would argue, and you'll probably get that support there. But some of the other ones, I don't know. I mean, Zaporozhye, really? I mean, I think there's lots of Ukrainian patriots living there now. So it would be difficult. Kharkiv might be 50-50, right? But that's like we're talking of cities with millions of people, or hundreds of thousands of people. Like, it's I don't know. So, like, do you think we still have to cross that bridge in this war before there's any sort of resolution or scaling down? I don't know. Maybe Richard's back.
Not quite yet. I'll come back when I'm back.
Yeah, because like that's sort of an important factor here. Because the large urban areas that have been fought over have generally been destroyed. So, I mean, are you going to have the cities I just listed burnt to the ground? Maybe.
I don't think that there's going to be as much opportunity for large wars to happen in these cities unless, I mean, I guess we could get to a situation where they're done in the east, they group up around all of their cities and try to keep them. It just doesn't seem realistic. It seems like the battle will be more like World War One, where you just kind of grind and grind and grind, and it'll be more fluid than World War One, but you just grind and grind, and then eventually one of the economies gives up. One of the backers pulls out. Somebody has enough and taps. That's usually how these things play out, and I think that's going to be how this ends. So I don't think there's going to be these massive Mariupol style battles. I don't think that the armies are going to be constituted or logistically supplied in such a way to actually have these long drawn out battles occur. I could be wrong. I don't really see that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, like, I tend to agree on the warfare aspect, but I'm talking almost more of like the administrative aspect of this. Who's going to run those places? If they're too close to a contact line, the Russians are going to have a problem with basically any sort of neutral or even almost pro-Russian leadership there. So like I think from a managerial standpoint, we're still like far away from any sort of conflict resolution. Um, someone's got to control and lead and supply electrical services and power and water and sewage, all these things. So schools, right? I mean, so like the whole thing, it's a total disaster. Like the cleanup is going to be rather unprecedented in modern history.
I mean, like I said, I've kind of voiced my opinion about how I see this whole thing panning out, and I think it's going to be over, the next 5 years or so. But I don't really think that that's going to be much of an issue. I think that most of Ukraine will probably be Russian, and then you know I think that the end goal for the Russians, the best way that they could turn this out is they end up piecing, Poland, Hungary, all of the different countries that have some claim in Ukraine, Hungarian, um, giving them back their little pieces and just kind of ending it there. I think that that would be the best. I don't know if Ukraine would even exist as a state, and if it was, it would probably be a puppet of Russia. So I think that that's kind of the direction this is all headed. That's why there's no negotiations. Everybody's kind of done talking. Now it's just a proxy war, and one side sees that proxy war as an existential issue for themselves, and the other side sees it as they should, which is a proxy war, and you're treating it that way, right? They don't want. They really don't want Ukraine to win on the battlefield. I don't think it's their worst case scenario, but I think the goal was to nuke Russia with sanctions. And after that failed, this has all just been, oh, how much damage can we do before this jig is up? And that's the stage we're still in. But yeah, I don't think you're going to have a lot of management issues when this whole thing is done, one way or the other.
Yeah, that's very possible, especially if it's just a total collapse, like you're talking about. Which, if it keeps going long enough, like that, that scenario becomes quite possible and realistic, versus some sort of settled compromise, which probably would be more complicated with like who controls what. Almost like a German solution, as we've talked about with Richard and other spaces before. Like I think that would be the most like pragmatic thing based off of modern history. But like I also am not naive to that, to the fact that if somebody totally breaks, like if you've lost and you're broken, you're not entitled to have a say in the future of what once was yours. Sorry, that's just the realpolitik of it. I know it's brutal and harsh, but that's just sort of how the cookie crumbles. And I think that notion would be very difficult for a lot of the very rah-rah pro-Ukraine side to accept, that they're no longer, that they don't factor in. They don't have an opinion that matters. They don't have a say in this. That would probably be the most angering and brutal thing, which would be probably a total collapse. If Poland takes pieces, Romania, Hungary, and then Russia gobbles up the rest, yeah, I mean, that would be an absolute disaster, I think, for NATO. And NATO countries would say, hey, look, we're glad to take in on this land grab now. We'll take it. It's ours. Thank you. The Poles would love to take portions of Western Ukraine, like Lviv. It's a Polish city for the most part. So that's something that's crossed my mind since the beginning. And I think Ukrainians feel very threatened by the Poles historically, and all the people around them, Hungarians, Romanians, and especially the Russians. So, yeah, Scott, that would just be like worst case scenario for Ukraine. Just they'll no longer have a say in the future of their country.
I mean that what part of Ukraine though are we talking about? Are we talking about the identity of Ukraine? Because yeah, that would be the worst for like what Ukraine is right now. But if that leads to an extended period of peace where a group of people is now not in a, I mean, whatever you want to think of the two governments, I'd probably rather live in Russia than in Ukraine, just me personally. And if you get out of that and out of the war that you've been in, and your sons and your brothers and your grandpas and your wives now, everybody's starting to go. If you can get out of that by any means, west or east, you're going to want that, right? And once that all wraps up, I just I just don't think that there's going to be problems like that. So that Ukrainian identity is just, I think it's going to die with this episode of Ukraine.
Like the new Ukrainian identity or the sort of Russo-Ukrainian identity. I mean, because that is sort of a unique thing, and I think that's part of
like Ukraine is a standalone state existing under its own momentum. That idea of Ukraine will be gone. There might be an idea of Ukraine, like the heritage of some of the parts of the. I don't think any of that will ever go away because people are attached to that like no other. But the post Soviet Ukraine will just not really be an identity anymore.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, it's wild to conceive of that now. We're still, I think, still somewhat far from that sort of scenario, but there has to be, like I said, there has to be a climax. This must come to an end. And I think if you were to make that comment in a very pro-Ukraine space, the first thing they'd say would be like, "Well, but did you see? We just hit Crimea. Did you see? Did you see? The end. We could still dictate terms. We have power. We can still hurt the Russians." And I feel like as long as there's that sense that we can still hurt you, we can still do this, we can still do that, that there will be elements of leadership in the West, especially the European Union, out of Belgium, that would be happy to continue to send Ukraine whatever it can for long strike capability. I think that you would see 48 hours before the Zelensky regime collapses, massive barrages of whatever they have left.
I mean, I'm being realistic here. I'm talking 5 to 10 years. Like this is not something that's going to end tomorrow or next week. Even if there was a complete collapse in the Ukrainian government in 2024, the Ukrainian military or whatever also collapsed, you're still looking at 3 to 5 years of settling borders and all sorts of different stuff. So this is not in any sort of short term. And I'm also very realistic about what you're saying. I don't know if there will necessarily be another climax. I think that we've seen some very climatic points, or points that it should have at least been climatic, but they weren't because of the side that didn't, excel in these climatic moments. I think the counteroffensive should have been a very climatic moment. I think the intensity of combat on the Southern Front should have been much, much higher, and it just wasn't because they never really made a big commitment anywhere. They got fucked up a couple times, and then they got scared, and then they started doing smaller stuff all over the board, and that should have been a climax. And I think that that's what sort of part of a possible climax could be for this conflict. I do think that they will continue fighting for a very, 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 very long time, but I just don't. I think it's going to be very hard to see a Ukraine back with the initiative like they were supposed to have after Bakhmut. I just don't think you are going to see Ukraine being able to reform their army with 500,000 of the more bottom of the barrel, I would say, group of mobilized. The people who are the least enthusiastic now are going to be the ones getting mobilized. But they can keep this fight going for another 2 to 4 years if that's how they choose this, that's the route that the Ukrainian people as well as the government choose to go down. So I think it's very realistic to think that Russia's going to get hit a bunch more times, and it's just going to keep escalating in that direction.
Guys, let's go to my boy Red Dog. I see he's been waiting for some time.
Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. Red
Bro.
Dog, you there?
Hey, so sorry. Thank you. I just I wanted to check in with Richard. Hey, Richard. It's just so circuitous because I got turned on to politics by reading an article about you in like 2011, 2012, and it's just kind of funny how the fucking world like marches on. You know what I mean? So I guess I wanted to say hello, Richard, and thank you so much for having me up on the stage. Thanks
Hi.
to Aiden and the speakers.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
You know, I kind of see like I live in Modesto, and we don't feel anything that fucking Silicon Valley. We have fucking nothing. Like our fucking life sucks, man. You know what I mean? I kind of see a pan West Coast China Russia fucking West Coast empire. You know what I mean? Like Novosibirsk all the way down to fucking Tijuana, run by Beijing and Moscow, would be fucking fantastic. If they would build the fucking factories, we'll fucking work in them. We have nothing.
What? So how Russia is going to be in charge of the west coast of North America?
They should.
Well,
we're unhinged now. Okay.
Have you been talking to Fish?
Yes.
But
I am for the
Beijing
Fish.
would also be involved, or
Yes.
okay, and they're gonna build factories. I mean, this sounds interesting. Highly speculative, I might say, but
Yeah. No, I'm just speculating.
okay, just kind of spitballing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't know why you would want Russia in charge, but you do you. I wouldn't want to live in any system controlled by the Chinese.
Yeah, that's a strange take. I mean, I'm all about some multipolarity. Not, I would like multipolarity with a caveat, of course, but none of that would foresee China or Russia managing U.S. Industry in any way. I don't think those people like Americans, and maybe Americans don't like those people. So I don't think that would work. Like, are you saying like a Red Dawn type scenario? No, I mean, I don't think we'll ever be there. Thank God.
An economic corridor from fucking Philippines all the way, and we'll just cut it off from fucking Idaho on down. You know what I mean?
Okay.
The whole coast.
Okay.
The whole coast.
Hold on. I think that's where I'm going to wrap up this space on that note. I'm going to be doing these a little bit more frequently, so be on the lookout for this. Thank you, everybody, for coming up and talking. I appreciate y'all. Be safe. Have a happy holiday, and I'll see you again soon.
Take care, Scott.
Thanks.